Welcome all to the Newcrown podcast. My name is Daryl, and I'm back with another guest. This guest, we've worked. Well, we were supposed to work on a mutual friends project, but it kind of fell through. But I'll let you introduce yourself.
What's going on? I'm CJ, the court jester. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Where'd you get the name of the court jester in the first place?
Yeah, it goes back to high school. I had an English teacher in like grade 10 who was talking to me about we were talking about Shakespeare and the different archetypal characters in Shakespeare, and they brought up like the notion of the fool character in Shakespeare and how often like a fool character comes in and like either is like supposed to be this like court jester character in like the king's court or the royalty's court, and they just like make a bunch of jokes, and it's usually like jokes that are interwoven with like political commentary of the time, of the characters themselves, of like real life people, and it's often just sort of like laughed off as like, oh, okay, how foolish, like within the world of the play. But then the audience gets this perspective of like, oh yeah, like they all see this character, this fool character, as being like very foolish, and they don't take anything to heart, but what they're saying actually holds quite a bit of like truth to it or weight. And the critique of like royalty or nobility within the play sort of goes under the radar of characters in the play, but it like hits the audience, and they're like, yeah,
It's subtle.
It's sneaky. And I thought like that concept as a performer and as a storyteller was something that I like gravitated towards and like really found interesting when I was young. And that was like around the time that I was starting to like make music.
So is that how you kind of got your style per se for music? Like, was that more like you didn't want to be too serious and too like upfront with everything? You wanted to make, like more of a jokey, flowy, but still have some meaningful, like say things to say to your raps.
Yeah, like I wanted to have the flexibility within my music to sort of branch out into both like commentary or critique and just like fun times, vibes, that sort of thing. And like another like character that I sort of hold dear to heart is the character of Robin Hood.
Okay.
It's like the concept of like taking from the rich and giving back to the poor.
Gotcha.
Or taking from the privileged and giving back to the underprivileged, and sort of being like in tune with the people.
All right. So what was your backstory like? Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, I grew up like in like Tiohtià:ke, so like Montreal. And I grew up on this small island just off the western tip of like the larger island of Montreal.
Gotcha.
And it's an island called Île Perrot. And I spent like all of my like childhood there, and then I like went to school in like the West Island. And it was basically living in the suburbs and doing that sort of for a while.
So what was that like? Would you like? Cause you have this like Robin Hood inspiration thing. Well, why? Like, where did that origin come from? Was it something that you saw? You kind of like you something that ticked you off when you're growing up, where you saw like a bunch of people who were like privileged, kind of like take advantage of it, and you saw other people who needed more, but then couldn't get any. Or like, what was the inspiration, if you will, for all that?
Yeah, I think like the inspiration from that comes from like this sense of like community that I had growing up, where I always found it like if like I'm eating, I want to make sure that the people around me are eating, type of thing. And like it feels weird to sort of like gatekeep or like hoard all this like wealth or like land or all that sort of thing. And I was like, it seems whack. And like the way that my parents brought me up too is like be like generous and be open to people and be accepting of people, be patient with people, because like the people and like the relationships that you form are what make you.
Where are they originally from, your parents?
Yeah, so my mom has like more so like European ancestry.
Gotcha.
But like her family, I think like on her mom's side it goes back to like Scotland, like
Okay.
4 or 5 generations back.
Gotcha.
And then on her dad's side, it goes back to like France, but like Quebecois, like French people that came over with like the settlers
Gotcha.
and have been here ever since. And on my dad's side, my father's family comes from Trinidad.
Oh, okay.
They've been there for like a number of generations, and then before then, India, and sort of
Oh, wow.
they came over through what I would imagine would be like they came over through the slave trade.
Mm.
So like there's like I think the term is West Indian. That's it.
Gotcha.
And
So yeah, you have a good mix. You have a good mix of ethnicities and cultures as well.
yeah, like colonialism will do that, eh?
Did you ever think of like incorporating the Caribbean sort of Indian kind of inspiration music into your own, like your own style?
Oh yeah,
Because like a lot of the stuff there like is, I mean, there's a lot of things that are kind of resurfacing now that are, because of representation. There's a lot more people that come from original, from Trinidad or from like Haiti or from Africa, and they're actually implementing their real cultures into modern day, either filmmaking or music. An example of that pops in my head right away is the Black Panther, where a lot of the music, the instruments, all that stuff, they actually went to Africa and actually implemented some of the tribes, the colors, everything. So I'm curious, what do you think, or what aspect of, from the Caribbeans, of India, even like from Europe, would you kind of take and put into your own sort of signature style, if you will?
Yeah, there's like a lot that I'm interested in right now, and I think the two like at the forefront of my brain are like steel bands coming from the Caribbean. Because I've been like, when I was much younger, I went to Trinidad. I've only been back like once, and I was supposed to go back like in 2020 and all that, and then something got in the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like I learned to play like very briefly like the steel pan, and then like I grew up with like hearing soca music every now and then, and like only recently have I started like going back into the genres that come from like Trinidad and from the Caribbean. And the steel pan has been something that's like intrigued me a lot, and especially like the band as a whole, with all of the different like sizes and sections of steel bands, steel pans. So that's one. And then another one that is like intriguing me a lot is like orchestral arrangements.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've been trying to like sort of weave into my music production for the last like few years now too.
Interesting. Do you I know you produce also, right?
Yeah.
You produce your own music. So that's kind of interesting, because you get to essentially curate your entire kind of music to however you want to kind of shape it. Because most people who are rappers or producers, they only do one thing or the other, so it kind of like they're very much limited to like finding the right people to work with. But seeing as you have both, you're both the producer and also the rapper, you kind of also implement that into do you want to do that independently, or do you also want to help also with like scoring music and film and all that stuff? Or is it what's the take?
Oh, I'd love to.
Independent artist, or are you also helping with like with like bigger projects like film?
I would love to. I think where I thrive is in collaboration.
Gotcha.
And like the thing that I feel more so that has like come out recently that I've been like excited about more so in my music and in like working on music is moments when I do get to collaborate with people. And like something I will say as a producer, like I get by, but I am by no means like a nice producer, like I'm not like one of those people that people will be like, oh yo, have you heard like this beat from the Cortez? That's not me right now. And so, but I do have like, and I trust my ears for music, and I feel like it helps when I am collaborating with someone where I can like communicate an idea that I have for a beat or for like a melody or a section of some sort, or like what sort of instruments to use. I can communicate that with someone who is able to like bring the idea to fruition, and also
Gotcha.
I feel like I'm able to like pick up on what people are trying to communicate to me if they're like, oh, I really want this part to like feel more like this, or
Mm.
have you. I feel like I'm dexterous enough to like work that into the music and everything. And
What would you? Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
as far as like branching outside of just like the music that I make for myself,
Mm.
I'm also like I've grown very interested in things like scoring for film,
Mm.
or for like other forms of stories. And that's actually how you and I met,
Mm.
made a connection. That,
Yeah.
yeah, I was supposed to be scoring on a film, a short film.
Yeah. So like, how like do you? I don't know if you have like many projects right now, but like how do you kind of choose your collaborators? Do you kind of is it more based on friendships, or are you kind of just like trying to see what ideas they have, and are you like, essentially my question is, are you trying to step out of your comfort zone, or are you just kind of like trying to remain within the realm of what you want to create?
I like to follow my interests, and like
Yeah.
I try as best as I can to like trust when my gut is telling me something.
Mm-hmm.
I also go with the approach of like trying things at least once, like whether or not I think like it would be a match or what have you, like
Mm-hmm.
giving it a shot and seeing like what can come out of it. Because there has been times in the past where either I've reached out to someone or I've heard someone's music and I was like, oh word, I feel like we could just like make the most epic thing, and then like it sort of goes back and forth for months where we're like just missing each other, and like the
Yeah.
collaboration never really like sinks in. And then there's also been times where people have been like, yo, I had this idea, would you mind like helping me with it? And I was like, it's not really my thing, but I'll try it. And like this newfound love came out of it, and this
Mm-hmm.
also like this awesome working relationship with the person came out of it. And so yeah, I try and like leave myself open to the surprises that can come along the road.
Gotcha. You're trying singing, or you sticking to rapping?
Oh no, I'm trying to incorporate more so singing.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
and I feel the same about my singing as I do about my producing, where it's like, yeah, I can do it. By no means are people gonna be like, yo, he's nice with it. You know?
Yeah. So when did you start getting the confidence of actually, putting your music out there and like kind of canceling out all the noise and like all of the potential feedback you'll get that will probably be not as nice as you think it would be,
Mhm.
I know, like, especially because I've also produced and also a score. So like when I first started, I don't have a musical background per se, but like I've learned everything through like working and trying out other things and being friends with other producers. So like, it took me a while before I got comfortable with, actually doing stuff, even like for film production. So like I'm curious, like, what was your process like? Were you always kind of confident in what you did? Were you kind of like, who cares? Are you like laissez aller like that? Or you're kind of like, you're very much, oh, I gotta perfect everything before I could, share my art with the rest of the world.
Mm. I've never been someone who like strives for perfection.
Gotcha.
Um, and I don't know if it's like always been a matter of like having the confidence to do the things, but there's always been the curiosity of just like seeing how people take it. And
Mm.
something that I realized, I think, like fairly early on in starting to put my music out, is that like once I make a thing, like I'll have a certain opinion of it and I'll be like, yeah, okay, this is like this shit like slaps or it connects or
Yeah.
it, like, and like feedback I'll get from other people is like, oh man, like there just like wasn't the energy there, or like that wasn't it, or it's like corny or whatever. And like
Yeah.
I've learned that like it doesn't really do me a service to be like, oh well, they don't know what they're talking about all the time. Because like
Hmm.
people have their opinions, and I think it's like informative in a certain way, but I also don't try and let it like shape how I make things. I take
Gotcha.
it and be like, okay, so this is how you see this. It's still out in the world and it's still doing its thing.
Mm.
And I understand that if I'm like trying to communicate an idea effectively, then maybe I can like evaluate other approaches. But at the
Mhm.
end of the day, like I try and make music for me first.
Mm.
And if people fuck with it, they fuck with it.
Nice. Okay. So like, what? Because I know you've done a couple of performances. I know you've done like, well, it's not like a big festival or anything, but it's still a performance in front of like a couple of people. So what was that like? What was your experience like? Did kind of like that? Was that always a plan? Was kind of something that you just kind of winged it? Like, hey, why not? Let's do something with it.
It was something that I was like always like I knew I was gonna have to get to that point.
Gotcha.
But I think out of everything, it's one of the things that I'm like the most nervous about when I
Mm.
go up and perform, because like when I put music out there, I can just sort of like let people like be with it on their own, and they can
Yeah.
decide whether or not they like it on their own.
Mm.
And I don't have to like be there, let alone I don't have to be the one like giving the music to them like directly and then
Yeah.
being okay, nah. So like it always like made me nervous, and still to this day it makes me nervous to like go up in front of a crowd of people, because like even when people are enjoying things, sometimes they just don't really like, it's not like everyone's going to be like always hype and always like
Yeah.
dancing and everything. People enjoy things in different ways.
But I mean,
So
you went to acting school. You also went to NTS, which another guest of mine, Amy, also went to, and
oh,
so yeah,
love
he was on the podcast as well. So like, I'm curious, did that also help out with your quote unquote stage fright, seeing as like you do performance art every time,
yeah.
and
Oh, it
then
helps.
yeah, did you incorporate like the tips, the acting tips per se that you maybe have learned into your performance, seeing as you're technically an actor performing the song that you've written?
Yeah.
So like, yeah.
Oh, hugely. Yeah. Like there even just some like simple things like um believing what you're saying. It's
Okay.
like it's something that's like it seems so simple. It seems like it goes without saying, but like a lot of my earlier performances, I remember just being like, I wrote the thing and then I like recorded the thing. And then when I came time to like perform in front of people, it was like this thing of like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna sort of like say the thing as I wrote it, and like I don't have to do anything else. But like there's so much like energy and
Yeah.
like vibes that come out of a performer like just standing behind what they wrote and like backing up what they wrote and being like, no, I believe in this and I'm going to show you how much I believe in this. This is like
Yeah.
I care about what I'm saying right now.
Yeah.
It's a simple thing, but yeah. Another thing too that I learned in like theater school that I think translates well to like stage presence uh is just like you don't always have to like move around unnecessarily.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's more powerful to like stay where you are and own your shit.
Which is I kind of like, because when we don't really think about the live performance as essentially theater, because when you're like performing a song, you're kind of like, okay, I gotta remember my lyrics, I gotta remember this and that, and the songs I'm gonna play. But you don't realize that like later on until you actually perform it. It is very much a show that you're putting on. You're trying to entertain the people, right? As much as the song itself is good, but you want the I know, I'm sure you've seen a couple of songs or listened to a couple of songs and a couple of artists who are their songs themselves aren't as good, but their live performances are like top notch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, shut up. I had Playboy Cardi and, and Travis Scott. Those type of people, they have very, their songs are good, but when you see them live, that's where like the whole vibe is. So I'm curious with acting, especially, do you ever think of incorporating an alter ego, or like is the court jester different from CJ or Z, like an extension of it? Like Drake and Aubrey they're two different people. Kendrick Lamar, and he has his own persona with Gemini, J. Cole as well. So like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, the way I see it for myself is like the court jester does feel like a different like side to who I am. It's like it's there's a certain aspect or an element of it that's like just performative by the nature of like it being a side of me that's only really existing in performance.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think that like while it is like a different side of me, it doesn't quite feel like I'm like putting on
Oh,
something that like isn't inside of me already. You
gotcha.
know, it feels more like it's like a little box inside of me that I'm like, okay, and now I'm going to go into this box for a little bit and just do my thing. And then there's also all of this other side of me that exists. That's Jeremy, who I am.
Yeah, because I know a lot of the performers, especially, they have, like in real life, like in our day to day, you can't really go act like a fool or whatever. But a lot of them, they kind of shelter that persona, and then later on they use it for their art, like if for painting, for example, music, film is a perfect representation of that, because a lot of people have like deep, like we call those like desires or like fantasies or whatnot, and they would write it into a script so that they could visualize it and let the world enjoy it without having the consequences of of real life repercussions. So I'm curious, what do you think? Like what do you think? Like how do you differentiate the court jester from Jeremy? What is there aspects of you that the court jester has, like maybe I don't know, like a very sarcastic sort of comedian? Because you said you've inspired yourself of the fool. Is that how kind of you see yourself, or is that an aspect of you that you kind of like? I don't want to be this, but I'll use this as a character later on. Like how did you differentiate these two personas?
Yeah, I think the way that I differentiate them is that like it's not so much that like the court jester isn't something that's like there for me, I guess, or like it feels like everything that happens with the court jester is just like thoughts that I have that I've gone through the process of like making more concrete, or like I've explored more than like just off the cuff sort of things. Okay. And so like, I think like both of them are like very similar. Like it doesn't feel like they're like separate.
Disjointed, not disjointed. They're very much
like the court jester can't exist without like me, sort of thing, or like my personality. It's not like something completely outside of who I am. It's very much so me.
So where did the style come from? Where did the because your rap style is not like traditional per se. It's not like it's not exactly boom bap, but it's not exactly trap. There's a very much like almost like a R&B pop, a little bit of soul in there as well. It's like the closest thing I could kind of think of is Amine.
Whoa,
you know what I mean?
Dude, damn, thank you.
You know what I mean? Yeah, no, it's very. I like it because it's like it's not serious, but it's serious. You know what I mean? Like you could listen to it without being like, oh my god, another lesson. But like you could listen to it like, oh, this is actually quite good. So I'm wondering, like, where'd you get that style from? Like, what was the inspiration of that?
The inspiration, I have a couple of like artist inspirations that like I've sort of seen do things, and I'm like, yeah, I like what they do. But then also I think like the main inspiration for me comes from just like following like what I think is fun to do, and also like, following like my curiosity when it comes to like exploring music. And so like I try not to like limit myself and be like, oh no, I can't do that, or like that's like not me. I'm always going to be like, okay, well, there's a part of me that I think I can find in this, and let's see what that is. And I think that also comes from a lot of like theater school that I've done. I've been like, I just graduated after doing, I think it was like 8 years of post-secondary theater school.
Okay.
And so with that comes a lot of like, I don't know, like theater things, and just like the weird basement theater kids that everyone is like, yeah, what's their deal? What do they got going on? Yeah.
So was theater something you always wanted to do, or it's something you fell into? How does that like?
Oh, theater happened by accident.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was like graduating high school, and I was dead set on going to like a music program, and like trying to get a bit better of an understanding of like music theory and like arrangement and all that sort of stuff. And my mom was like, well, you should go see like the other like post-secondary programs and see what they have to offer. Maybe you'll find something that you like. And I was like, I'm not going to change my whole life goals off of one afternoon at some random college. And then I went to some random college. I saw a theater department, and I was like, okay, I'm changing my whole life goals, and I'm gonna see what this does for a little bit.
Well, was that like, was acting something that you kind of fell in love with and you want to pursue later on, or is it more kind of a sort of hobby compared to the music side that you're trying to do?
No, I feel like both of them go very much so like hand in hand with each other.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Where it's like neither one feels like a hobby. To me, it feels like both of them are going to be like my career. I feel like my career is more so like as an artist, and it just takes on different shapes at different times.
Interesting. So like what what is life? What's life as an artist right now? How do you describe, especially after graduating? Is it exactly how you expected it to be? Is it more like, oh my god, because you're not, now you're kind of in limbo now. There's no like guidelines. There's nothing. There's no one telling you what to do. And it's all up to you. So what's the life of an artist like?
Uh, yeah, limbo is a great word to describe it, I think. The life of an artist after having gone through like schooling to be an artist feels like there's just so much more like space and room and like agency. Whereas before there was like a set schedule of like things that you had to do every week, and like you knew that schedule for like months in advance, and it was going to be steady, and like you were like, yeah, I just have to focus on this, and then after this, like in 2 weeks we're doing this, and then after that in a month we're doing this and everything. And now it's just sort of like, oh, okay, so like I have 2 months where I don't really have plans, but I know that there's still things that I want to do, and no one outside of me is going to like tell me to do those things, so I should just do those things. Like coming up with your own like routine or schedule or what have you. I think that's been the biggest learning curve for me, but it feels like a lot of limbo and like finding things to keep yourself occupied with.
Do you like that, or is that more scary? Because I know some people, they like a very sort of fixed schedule. Everything is already laid out for them. All you gotta do is do it. Or other people, they prefer being free because it allows them to kind of try things out. So how do you feel about the state of limbo?
I kind of like it, it like I like having like time to do things, and I also feel like I like having the ability to like sort of change my schedule every now and then. And like the thing that I feel like I'm like falling behind in a bit is just like keeping myself accountable. And I think that's like the biggest thing that I need to like work at, is just like waking up every day and like trying something or working towards something, and also like not being too hard on myself on the days where I just like can't seem to get anything done.
So yeah, because I know for producing especially, uh, a lot of people, like me for example, I would always give myself like a goal for a while. I told myself like at least a one beat a day, if you will. Some people do 3 beats, a whole something, like a big schedule. And the thing is, a lot of these things you can't really force. And so, the way your brain works, kind of like whenever you feel defeated, you kind of just like you keep spiraling down, and vice versa. The more you get wins, you also feel more confident about the next win, etc. So, like how do you kind of like juggle all of that, especially mental health is a very, very big thing. How learning how to balance work and also living life to the fullest. So how what's the experience like right now for you?
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm like finding a lot more is that I feel like there's more progress made when I focus on like giving myself like time to do things rather than giving myself like a certain standard of quality that the things have to be done at. And I'm trying to get comfortable with the idea of just being like familiar with the things that I'm doing rather than like trying to have them be the best things ever done. And like giving myself like more, basically like the idea of creating opportunity to me feels less like doing things at the height of how they can be done, and more about just doing things to maintain the practice and like keeping myself in tune with the things that I enjoy.
Do you participate? You still participate in like projects that I don't know, NTS or other faculty that, let's say for example, for a play, for example, do you still go into working with them to be an actor or maybe a music score, or you kind of like try to not do everything yourself, but kind of like more you do your focus on your own personal projects? What's that like? You're still open to like working with all of these big projects, or you kind of just like, okay, I have too many this year, I gotta chill, I gotta prioritize my own projects versus the others? What's your priorities like when it comes to that?
I think my priorities right now are like I have not had the fortunate problem of being too busy this year. So
Okay, well, that's good.
I I think right now my priorities are like having like a couple of like personal projects that I can always like come back to and like
Mm,
work on, and like something that I know I can keep myself busy with.
mhm,
And then when things that like aren't just stemming from my own like direction or like um, drive
mhm,
pop up and like present themselves as opportunity,
mhm,
weighing the options of like what is being like the most fruitful to me, and like if something like interests me and like inspires me and also like pays bills,
mm.
that's those are a couple of things that I like. I'm like, oh, okay, that seems like a cool thing. And then like the personal projects or the projects that are just like stemming from me sort of solo,
Mhm.
uh, are things that I know I can always come back to and can work on like while I'm working on other projects, or they're very portable projects and I can take them with me.
Gotcha. For like your project, you're working on albums right now,
Yeah.
or a album. Do you believe that, like, how do you shape your album? What is like? Is it like a concept album? Is it more like songs you just want to put them all together like a playlist, or like what? What's your process like in creating an album?
Yeah, my process for creating an album, the first time I made an album, my process was just sort of like write songs and then see like sort of mm, like the playlist order of them like afterwards.
Hmm.
What I found in doing that was that like I had a bunch of songs and there was like a loose sort of theme connecting all of them that I tried to like work into a concept album.
Mm,
And I found at the end of it, I was like, oh, okay, I really like the idea of a concept album. And I like the idea of working with like a theme or a narrative through an album. So going forward, I wanted to like approach the albums that I'm working on with that same scope.
hmm.
And what I found now is that like the process that I have for the albums that I'm working on is like basically like just I'm trying to tell an overarching story. So I'm
Hmm.
starting with like the main story points that I want to hit. Or
Hmm.
like first thing I start with the idea of like what the message is, I think,
Okay.
leaving that message open to being changed as the project gets created. And then I touch on the story points that I want to hit that I think can help me like bring that message out. And then I start writing the music and be like finding where the music fits into the story, or like writing the story points out in music form. And sometimes it's happened a couple of times now where I'm like, you know what? There's this idea that I didn't touch on in like the story points or in like the overarching message that I think also fit into the story. So I started like writing that into the world, and then it becomes a part of the world. And sometimes it doesn't become a part of the world and it becomes a single, or it goes onto an EP or something. So it's like just finding where the music comes out, what it touches on, and like sort of shaping the album around the content that I'm putting into it.
Are you worried? Are you worried about the track number, or are you just kind of like however many songs is needed? Because I know, like, I know there's a lot of concept albums that, well, a lot of artists I know they make concept albums, but because they made so many songs, the main plot point or the main story, the main message of the album kind of just gets diluted, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why a lot of like industry people, they always like to talk about, concept albums being short or relatively short, because it's, it's straight to the point. It's good music because you know that the story or the plot, the message is all coherent, and there's
Mm-hmm.
no filler tracks, if you will. So what is your take on that?
At this point right now, I'm not too concerned with like the amount of tracks that I have.
Gotcha.
I'm just in the like stage of generating, and then I'm planning on going through again with like an editing comb and being like, okay, well, does this actually serve the story, or is this something that I just put in for vibes?
Mm.
Does that work in the context of the world? Is it necessary for the story? Is it necessary for the project? Can it find a home on another project? Or can it stand alone as a single, and sort of sussing out that from there.
For the raps themselves, do you freestyle them, or you often like take a lot of time to write like what do you want to say and trying to find intricate ways to make it sound, as as hot as possible. You know, what I mean, as like, oh, like, these bars are about to hit real hard, or you kind of just like, I'll just freestyle it and we'll see whatever comes up, and then I'll just edit it afterwards. What's your
I
process like?
I cannot freestyle for shit. So everything I do is like written, and like I spend a lot of time usually like walking around just being like what sounds nice, like
Mm,
what sounds fun. And then I'll like come to my notepad and like write it down. Sometimes I'll like spend hours just at my notepad with like a blank page and being like, okay, the words are there, where are they? Got to find them. Got to pull them out of the air and put them onto this page. But yeah, I spend a lot of time with my notebook.
is
Just
is the vibes or the lyric like what is more like your priority? Is the vibes, the cadence, the intricate rhyming? Is that a very big concern for you, or you just kind of just try to make it sound as nice as possible?
I think it comes in like a sort of like level system of sorts
Gotcha.
where like I have first and foremost, like I think the thing that I'm like most like adamant on is like, okay, what am I talking about? Like,
Mm,
does this like make sense,
mm,
or is it just like sounding fun for the sake of sounding fun? And sometimes I have done stuff that like just sounds fun or like isn't necessarily like a cohesive like narrative structure,
yeah,
but it's like a lot of images back to back that like sound fun and also create this larger picture.
yeah.
But like the what that I'm talking about is always like top of my list, and then after that, I think it's like like how the what is explained.
Hmm.
And then after that comes things like flow, and I think rhyming actually comes like sort of down after, like after flow, after explaining the what, and after the what itself.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so you don't really take much like importance in the actual rhyme themselves.
Well,
You
I
kind of just
do hold importance in the rhyming, but I think for me it's like it's not about having the most like intricate rhymes.
intricate rhymes. Yeah.
It always like feels like it has to rhyme for me, but sometimes I'm like, okay, like it doesn't have to be like super complex. Sometimes it could just be like, oh, I have a hat and I'm at bat or something like that. Like just simple rhymes, as long as I'm getting the message out.
Gotcha. Have you ever tried to challenge yourself and actually making a song, or perhaps maybe a couple of songs, and trying to really push yourself as hard as you can and say like what is the best thing I can do at the moment, and then, like just to like give yourself a reference point, so like, okay, let's try and make ourselves better than what we did this year. A lot of like a lot of athletes do that often, where they kind of just like go hard on their game or whatever. Or the people who do bodybuilding, they often try to one rep max. So I guess this would translate in like, okay, what is the best track I can make, bar for
Mm.
bar, flow for flow, make me sound as like close to Eminem as possible, and then we'll see, and then we'll see what we could do to improve next year. Is that something you ever tried to do as like an exercise, if you will?
Yeah, I think like the approach that I have is I'm always trying to make my favorite song. Like
Okay, okay.
everything that I do, I'm always trying to make my favorite song. And like I said before, I make music for like me first, and
Mm,
then that's like the litmus test. So,
mm,
and like I find that that comes in like so many different like ways. Like sometimes my favorite song has like intricate wordplay, and it
mm,
has like double entendres,
mm,
and it has like flows where there's like no room for breath. And
mm.
then other times it's like a song all about choosing tea, but it just goes so hard, you know?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that.
The T-Bag sounds pretty good. It's pretty
Yeah.
good. It's like, speaking of the actual, the songs. Like, like, who's your favorite rapper? What's
Mhm.
the if you will, the person you're trying to not replicate, but kind of like trying to strive to become, if you will, as a performer. It could be like even just a musician, just not
Yeah.
necessarily a rapper, but who's the top?
I got a number of them. I think like there's different people that I look to for like different things, I think. And like as far as flow goes, Jid is like probably at the top.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
Jid's got like crazy flows, and like it just everything. I'm like, yo, that's tough. In like recordings for like attitude and like how you come across when you're like saying what you're saying.
Mm.
J. Cole, I would say, is
Yeah.
the top for me.
Dreamville, basically the whole Dream.
Dreamville's tough, dude. Dreamville's such a
I love Dreamville. I love Dreamville.
But then performance wise, I saw Kendrick in concert, and like it was such an incredible performance. Like the way that the show was like curated and choreographed, and like the visuals that he had, incredible. It was one of my favorite like concerts I've been to in my life, if
Which
not
one was
my
that? Which one was this one? Which tour?
damn tour.
Oh, Depth. Yeah, it's really good.
It was
Yeah.
wild, dude. It was sick.
Where'd you watch it? Where'd you watch it?
Bell Center.
Gotcha. Because I watched him when he was doing. He did the Festival d'Été Québec. He was
Okay.
in Quebec, and and he was doing his damn tour as well. Honestly, I loved it because his whole playlist, if you will, was just like well like curated, and
Mhm.
everything kind of like blend perfectly.
Yeah.
So like, oh, I'm curious, what was like, because you've done a performance already. Well, how do you curate the songs that you make? You like go straight from one album, or you pick your favorite songs? Like, is it the songs that resonate the best with the public, like feedback wise? Well, what's your process like?
The way that I try and put together like a set list is I try and make like this arc of energy.
Okay.
And so like I'll have like songs that I'm like, okay, yeah, like these are like making it into the set list for me.
Yeah.
And then the way that I'll like structure the order is like, if it's like a shorter set, then it's like got to start at a certain place, and then every song just builds on the energy and builds on the energy and builds on the energy. But like if I have a longer set, let's say, then I feel like I have the flexibility of like building on the energy, coming back down for a bit, making it like a little bit mellow, and then building back up on the energy.
Mm.
Another thing that I try and look out for in like making a set list, because like a lot of my music ends up finding its way onto like these concept albums, or like this like idea of like, oh yeah, this is where this is going to go in like a project or something, so this is what I'm trying to say with this song. And also try and like see if there's some sort of narrative format that the set can take, where it's like telling a story at the same time as just being an enjoyable experience. But first and foremost comes like energy and vibes, and then if a story can be found, then I'll try and go for that.
Do you go off of like your best hit and like more of a sentimental and best hit, or are you kind of just trying to do a crescendo where it essentially goes from calm to, you know, as loud as you possibly can? What's your kind of curb, if you will, of energy?
Again, it depends on like how long the set is. So like if I have like 3 songs, then I'll try and go with like something that like is like eye-catching, or like that people can like sing along to if they don't like know the song beforehand, like something that's like easy and catchy. And then I'll like go with things like after that, follow it up with like a song that like gets people like feeling like loose and like into it, that like knocks. And then the last one is just got to be like all out, like just an enjoyable experience on all levels.
Where you performed at clubs, or like what are venues like?
I've performed so far at like a couple open mics. I performed at this like art jam showcase that we have like in Montreal, and I think it's also in like Toronto, New York, and Ottawa potentially. And then I've also done like variety shows here and there.
Gotcha. Have you gotten feedback from like anywhere outside of Canada, or even the rest of Canada, or it's mainly local for now?
It's mainly local for now. I mean, like on Spotify, you can sort of see like where in the world people are looking from, or like listening from. And so like I'm like shocked every now and then. I'll see like, oh shit, someone in like Australia is listening to me, or like Malaysia, and I'm like, yo, what? Damn. I don't know anyone from either of those places, but people fuck with it, so I'm down.
What's your dream performance venue for you?
Oh, my dream performance venue, I would say like right now, like with where I'm at right now, I would
Mhm.
love to perform at a place like an intimate venue that still has room for dancing. So like something a
Right.
bit bigger than like um I don't know, something a bit bigger than a club, but not quite as big as like a full-on performance venue.
Okay.
Uh, but then if I had like no limit
Yeah,
to
no
like
limit.
perform,
Sky's the limit.
sky's the limit. I would love to perform in like a gladiator arena. I feel like
Oh,
that would
really?
be sick. Yeah, like in the Colosseum in Rome.
Yeah, at Rome. Yeah.
Bro, that would be so sick. Yeah.
Like, have you ever do you watch like venues like Tomorrowland and like
Oh, yeah.
Glastonbury and all them?
Yeah.
Because I know those guys are very much, well, especially Tomorrowland, are very much EDM oriented. Have you ever tried to kind of just like get a pop track off of like, I don't know, EDM mix or something like that, so that you can get a lot of attention? Because a lot of people they use kind of one hit to attract their audience. So like Tentacion did that with his song. And then I don't know if you know Lil Mabu is a drill rapper from New York, but he did essentially kind of a cypher freestyle that like kind of blew up, and then everybody started listening to what he has to offer. I know a lot of people listen to Lil Nas X, for example, is a perfect example where he did country to
Mhm,
attract the people from that side,
mhm.
but it also had the rap in it, so it kept the thing authentic, and then also it got Billy Ray Cyrus on there to actually solidify the track. So I'm curious, have you ever tried to collaborate with just like some random genre you never thought you could ever do, like
Oh,
EDM
oh, yeah.
potentially, and then just make a crazy hit song?
Yeah, I mean, like in relation to EDM, like a buddy of mine who is like a DJ and like a EDM like producer, he and I have been working on like an EP for the last like year or so.
Gotcha.
Um, like we made a single last year, and we were like, okay, it's just gonna be a single, but it's like more EDM like oriented.
Hmm.
And then recently he reached out to me and he was like, yo, I got two other tracks that like I had ideas for, but I don't think the ideas are like the people who I had in mind for them are like interested in them.
Hmm.
Do you think you can do something with it? And I was like, yeah, send them my way. Let's see. And so now I'm like almost done this like 3-song EP with
Nice.
it's like all EDM and like some rap and like singing and
Yeah.
all that sort of stuff. But another example too is that like last year, this dude reached out to me who he makes like rock and roll and like metal music. And he had this one song that he wanted like a rapper on, but he didn't really know like any other rappers, I don't think. And so like he was talking with the sound engineer he was working with, and this was a dude who I like worked with years ago at the
Hmm.
same studio. And the guy was like, oh, I know a rapper. And he reached out to me, put us in contact, and we made a song together that's like a metal song with like this rap verse in the middle. It's called Black Limo by Eric.
Gotcha. I'll link in the description. Just send me the link and I'll put it there.
Yeah, word. Yeah.
So do you often reach out to other people just randomly, just kind of like hope
Yeah.
to just network and then potentially make something out of it?
Oh, yeah. 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 Hugely. I'm working on a song right now that I'm like, I want it to be like a summer anthem for Montreal.
Gotcha.
And I want to include like a whole bunch of just different Montreal artists and musicians, like vocalists and musicians, like on the track
Hmm.
incorporated in it, so that it's like just a bunch of like people from like different genres, different bands, and like different vibes, all on this one track. That's just like, yo, man, let's have fun in the summer, sort of thing.
One track, you should do a whole album for it, the Montreal Summer album.
Eventually, I think like the goal is to have this one track be like a first introduction to like, okay, like this is who I am, and like
Yeah,
these people collaborating, and then I think I would love to do like a full on like all across Montreal project.
cool.
So I
Because
think that's long term.
I was thinking the same thing, but early on, because that's why I have a lot of musician friends they're doing R&B, rap. They sometimes do country, and other times they do like a little pop as well. And I was planning on making like a kind of a project kind of similar to that, where it's like across Montreal, a lot of artists join in, and then I could like contact with other people who have like an actual festival venue to actually perform all these things. But that's interesting. You come up with that because that would be an interesting concept where not only a track but an actual playlist. So it's something that I mean, the nice thing about Montreal is because not only are we multilingual, we're also very multicultural. So, we have different, beats from different places, and I could actually make like, hey, you listen to the Spider-Man album by Metro Boomin.
Yeah, yeah.
You know how like it there's a lot of different artists from everywhere that has like different sort of genres, but all into one project. So instead of having the Spider-Man project, we have the Montreal project, and we take everything that is nice about the city, which is there's a lot of things that have like the authenticity of everything, and then incorporate it into one massive project. I think that'd be crazy. And then who knows? Maybe even perform at Oshiaga.
Yeah, dude.
Have you ever thought of like doing something that grand?
That would be sick. That would be, and especially in like a place I grew up, bro.
Yeah, that'd be sick. So like going back to your inspirations and also like the way you do your albums. Do you ever listen to old school hip hop? Or yeah, even old school hip hop, like old school, like Earth, Wind, Fire, Al Green, all them people, and actually try to incorporate those styles in it.
Oh, hugely. Yeah. Like I grew up like my dad. I credit my dad with a lot of like my musical influence because like he just had a bunch of CDs in his car that were like just like mixtapes of different artists and like people that he liked, and it ranged from everything from like Louis Armstrong and like Ray Charles to like Queen, Lady Gaga.
Oh, that's a very big.
Oh yeah, no, my dad's like music taste and music interests I feel is a huge influence on like my music interest. And like he also went through this phase of like every now and then he'd just send me like a different Marvin Gaye song, and I was like, yeah, that's the sauce.
Let's get it on. Oh man, so like what would be your, because I've asked you your dream venue. What is your dream project that you want to do? Is it very much a film or a personal album oriented? Is it like incorporate maybe with film? Is it something that you want to like I don't know, some avant-garde stuff that like nobody has ever thought of? Maybe something immersive that I don't know. Well, what is your dream project that you want to come into fruition, both realistically speaking and if the sky was the limit? What would be your two answers for that?
Yeah, I think realistically speaking, my dream project is a project that like creates this universe that sort of like can transcend artistic mediums. And so there's, if you want to like get the full picture of the project, then you can't just have it through only listening to the music. You can't just have it through only like reading the novel or the graphic novel or the zine or the literature. You can't just have it like only seeing the visual side of things. Like all of it are a part of the same like universe and tell or feed into like telling this whole story. While at the same time, like it's not to say that like you're going to be gypped out of like having the story or having like a full sense of a project with any of the mediums, but like all of the mediums still lead into the same project. So that's like my dream project that I've like started working at right now.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So what's the concept of it, if you want to like divulge anything?
Oh yeah, sure. It's like playing on the character of the Fool, and how like at the end of my first album, the Fool gets like kicked out of the castle by the king. Okay. And so the Fool then goes to the townspeople and sort of has this large like speech to the townspeople in the town square, being like, this is what the king's doing, and this is how the king's keeping us down, and these are the things that we find ourselves like coming up against, the obstacles in our way. And basically incites a revolution, the town people, and then the town people attempt to overthrow the king. So that's like the two albums that I'm working on both lean into that story right now.
Interesting. It reminds me a lot of like Logic when he was doing the Incredible True Story, where it originated with, well, I mean, it started with the Incredible True Story, but Under Pressure was part of like the sequence leading up to that.
Mhm.
So I'm curious if like you ever think of, you know, ahead of time of maybe I'm gonna try like a 4 album thing and then try and spread the whole project out like that, or is it just kind of like as you're going, you're kind of like thinking of these things. Are you going James Cameron essentially, or are you just gonna like you know you're planning 6 movies that maybe not will be made, or you just kind of like I'm gonna do a second album. If if the story's still there, I'll keep going until it stops. What's your
Yeah.
take?
The plan that I have right now is like these 2 albums, like they're for sure going to be 2 albums.
Okay.
And like I got the idea for them as I was like finishing writing the first album, because I thought that the first album was just going to be a standalone album, and I was like, this is it. And then I can like work on the next sort of things.
Mhm.
And then I got to the end of it and I was like, oh, there's more to this story. Okay. And then I started like thinking about like the big like what's and the how to explain it and everything. And then those sort of jumped out to me as like 2 separate things.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, well, I can start working on them. But every time that I would work on it, I was like, oh, but like if this part, like I have this idea for the 3rd album, and I feel like writing something here could help that idea later on, or could like feed into that idea later on. So that made me like start thinking about both albums at the same time, and like writing both albums at the same time, just jumping back between the 2.
Interesting. But before last question, do you have a signature? Something I asked another producer friend of mine. Do you have a signature in your production? So I'm like talking like Pharrell has a signature, the 4 count.
Yeah.
Like unless you have like a literal tag saying your name, but do you have a signature as both the artist and the producer? And if so, what it is? What is it?
I was thinking about like a producer tag recently that I find is just funny, and it's like all my pants are capris. That's producer tag, because like for real, all my pants are like I don't have any pants that go down to my ankles, like these ones right here. I'm a tall dude. So that was a producer tag I was thinking about. But if not, like little things that I tend to do a lot in like my beat production or my music making are like I'll incorporate like triplets in certain like either percussive things or in like melodies.
Okay.
Because I just love a good triplet. I love syncopation.
Yeah.
Or another thing that I tend to do a lot of, which like my friends have started like sort of making fun of me for, is I'll often use horns. Just like they're like, yo, like there was this one time actually I was talking with a couple of buddies of mine who were working on a song, and it was just the 2 of them, and they were like, they got to this point where they were stuck with the music, and they were like, okay, we feel like there needs to be something else here, but we're not sure what it is. And then one of them turned to the other one and was like, I hate to say it, but like, you know what Jay would say in this situation? Jay being me, Jeremy. You know what he would say in this situation? You should throw some horns on there. And they both laughed, and they were like, fuck, but like, let's try it. And they tried it, and they loved it. And they were like, we can't tell him about this ever.
No, it's funny because I too, when I was doing my score for my own film, horns I really love because they especially when you change octaves, you have a couple of horns up top as as the main melody, but you also have the deep dark the bass horns, and you couple it up with the bass themselves. It sounds so whole, like it's just so like royal, but also like it sounds I don't know. There's something there's something with it that has like a very dominant presence, and I love that aspect of horns.
Yeah, I love like it sort of like, to me it feels like it like fills out the sound, or like gives it like this like weight to it.
Yeah.
And, like I think part of the reason why I use horns a lot in my music is because that's like how I learned music theory. I learned like through a trombone.
Oh, that's your first instrument?
That was my first instrument. Yeah, like when I
Nice.
was in high school, I started learning music like on the trombone, and then transferred my knowledge to beat making.
Interesting. So right now, like, how does that like is it the what you call it, the way you learn trombone similar as you learn piano, for example, like the sort of the way, like I don't know, like the octaves and also like the counts. I'm guessing because I don't know. I never did any of that. I did guitar, so like for me it was very much like I was bound to six strings. You know what I
Right.
mean? Whereas the piano, you literally have all the keys. You have 88
Right.
keys, and you just So I'm curious, like, what was the process like? Was it very easy to translate with the trombone to producing, or was it more of I don't know, a big learning curve?
There was definitely a learning curve that came between the two because I think the thing that made it easier was that like in learning the trombone, I learned how to read like sheet music, and
Gotcha.
I learned like quite a bit throughout. I think I studied it for 5 years or so.
Mm.
The theory that I learned of music was something that I found helped me when I was able to translate it to like piano sheet music,
Mm.
and then from there, sort of like figure out the arranging like different sections around the piano because you just sort of have like the
Yeah,
full scope or a fuller scope of like
yeah,
what can go into like the harmonies there.
yeah.
Yeah. So, but it definitely did take quite a bit of time. And I think there's like somewhere still on YouTube, there's a video of me early on, like one of my first songs in the opening, like intro skits that I have for the music
Okay,
video. I'm like
yeah.
playing piano and it's rusty, dude.
I don't know. Me, my trick was I literally put the letters on the keys.
Yeah.
So I have my own like my keyboard. I literally put the letters on the keys, so I know exactly what key I'm playing on, and so I already know the sequencing. Because ultimately speaking, the hardest part I think for a piano or like a novice learning the piano is finding what key goes where, like what like the coupling
Mhm.
essentially, because you have so many, and you're like, okay, where am I at? Because like there's like I think what is it? There's like there's a certain amount, and then there's the second octave, third octave, fourth octave. I think goes up to like
Yeah.
six
Yeah.
octaves or something. So you're essentially playing the same note but in a different octave. So like most of the time you're kind of like, okay, where am I at now? What's yeah, what type of thing? So like my trick was kind of like literally writing the letters on the keys themselves. So I didn't have to worry about okay, this is A. There's the
Mhm.
A right here. All I have to do is just play them together. It'll sound whole.
Mhm.
So I think that was my learning curve translating between a guitar and the piano. But everyone
I
has
think
their own tricks.
I think my hugest like learning curve, the thing that took me the longest was like, so trombone sheet music is often written, or I think I don't want to say exclusively, but it's very often written in the bass clef.
Okay.
And piano sheet music is often written in like both clefs, treble and bass, or two
Yeah.
of the clefs that there are.
Yeah.
And so like usually like the right hand will play in treble and then the left hand will play in bass, and then
Bass,
some
yeah.
might play in like the same clef and all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the way that the clefs are organized on like a standard like bar chart to the stanza or the graph, I forget the word for it, but like
Yeah.
lines there,
Yeah.
the way that like the notes are organized in each clef is like different from one another.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you see like a note on like the bottom line
Yeah.
of a bass clef, it's going to be different from the bottom line of a
Of a
treble clef.
treble clef. Yeah.
So that was like a mind fucky bit of like, okay, like the bass notes, I was like, yeah, okay, this is this note, this is this note, this is this note, and then the like treble clef, I was like, oh, what is it? It's a bass. So and then every good boy deserves fudge, and like I would just
Hey, you've okay. Yeah, you put an
yeah
acronym to it. Yeah. That's good.
yeah.
That's cool. Well, I mean, so for my final question, do you have any projects? I mean, I know you were talking about you're working on another album. So you have any projects that are coming out soon? This is coming out in like December. So you know, uh, like
Oh,
think about it. Think about it like ahead of time because I know you have I think you have a show thing this week or next week I think.
yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if you have like a recording of your show or whatnot, or you have I don't know a preview, but if so, like any projects that can be seen to the public, promoted.
Well, by the time that this comes out, then I will have one song that's for sure dropped called "Pretty."
Okay.
It's out on like all streaming platforms, and I can send you the link when it drops and all that.
Yes, that's something like yeah.
And then I also have this other song that is dropping December 15th called "Cocky."
Oh, interesting.
So both of those are coming out. And yeah, aside from that, musically, I think those are the only like real plans I have right now. But more music will be coming in the new year. Yeah, just figuring out like what's coming first and what's coming down the line. Also, music videos.
Oh yeah, okay.
I'm gonna get some visuals done.
So are Pretty and Cocky in the same album or just a single you're releasing?
They're two singles. One of them is one that I worked on with a buddy of mine named Laurent. He's like a collaborator that I've started working with recently. He's the one I made the T song with. And then the Cocky is a remix of another buddy's song that like is already out. And I was like, yo, this is fire. And we started talking and I was like, could I get like a version of this with the second verse removed? And could I like re-put it out to the world? And he was like, yeah, man, run that shit. Do that. So
all right. So we'll stay tuned. Thanks again, Jeremy, for being on the podcast. I'll link everything in the description. So just send me all of the like even your Spotify link, your Apple Music link, all that. If you have an album if your album's coming out or EP, just let me know and I'll put it onto the description as well. So best of luck on your projects. Thank you very much for being on the podcast again. And see you guys all next time on the next episode for another guest.
Let's go.